Hello, DC fans. Today we're going to look at James Gunn's hot-off-the-press reveal of the new DC Slate. Now, James Gunn released a video on his Twitter account, and I'll be pulling visuals from that as well as lots of quotes, but we'll also be looking at some of the information that was learned yesterday in a behind-closed-doors meeting with Peter Safran and James Gunn as they shared insider information for the trade publications. And in particular, I'm going to be quoting from The Wrap, which has some great articles. You can check them out after this video. But it gives us some, behind-the-scenes information that maybe wasn't revealed in that initial video by James Gunn. So let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Okay, so right off the bat, both Gunn and Safran talked about the existing 2023 movie slate. In particular, they said, "We will say that we've gotten very lucky with the next 4 projects. Shazam 2 is coming out. Shazam is kind of off to itself, but then Shazam leads into Flash, and the Flash resets everything. Gunn said in his opinion, The Flash is probably one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. It's an amazing film. Then, he said, it goes into Blue Beetle, which is awesome. This has its own world, and that fits directly into our DCU, which goes into Aquaman, which will then lead into Superman and other projects that we'll talk about in a moment. So they said, once we get these first projects that we have, then everything will be consistent going forward. Gunn said the 4 movies are terrific. And Safran added, there's no reason why any of the characters and the actors playing those characters are not part of the DCU. There's nothing that prohibits this from happening. He said, we just haven't decided the story that we want to tell that incorporates Shazam or Aquaman. Safran then casually mentioned how Jason Momoa always saw Aquaman as a trilogy in his mind. Interesting. So, as to the rumors, though, of Momoa playing Lobo in the new DC universe, Gunn shot that down. He said, we're not going to have an actor playing 2 different roles. That is not going to happen. That's a bummer. I was kind of hoping to see Momoa playing Lobo. But, nonetheless, they then went into, the very complicated situation with Ezra Miller, which I'm not going to comment my opinions on the whole thing. I'm just going to read their quote, which is that Ezra is completely committed to their recovery. And we are fully supportive of that journey that they're on right now. Safran said when the time is right, when they feel like they're ready to have a discussion, we'll all figure out what the best path forward is. But right now, they are completely focused on their recovery and in making enormous progress. Okay, so I'll take a brief pause here and throw in some of my own comments. I'll admit I was looking for maybe a little bit more of a definitive answer on whether these 4 characters are going to be going forward into the DCU. Now, they sure made it sound like Blue Beetle and Aquaman are. I mean, they even implied a 3rd movie for Aquaman. And if you remember, Momoa was all excited after meeting with Safran and Gunn. And now that we know he's not going to be Lobo, the only thing left to be excited about would be playing Aquaman. So presumably we will get more Aquaman and probably Blue Beetle. They really left it up in the air about Ezra Miller. And honestly, the way they kind of said that Shazam is kind of off to itself made me think it might be the last Shazam movie. Now, I wish they would have just said that, but I also understand, they don't want to come out and say, by the way, Shazam, that's the last movie. It has no meaning whatsoever, because then no one will go see the movie. I totally get that, but still, they really left things a little more up in the air than I wish they would have. But nonetheless, we got a lot of hints as to what may be happening. All right, so now let's talk about the new slate. So one important thing to mention is that they called this a unified approach to DC storytelling. They said that they have an 8 to 10 year mapping, and they described what they're releasing today as Chapter 1, and they called it Gods and Monsters. And they even said this was only part of that chapter. So I want to reiterate, I'm pulling a lot of information from The Wrap. Fantastic publication, great articles. I recommend you go read them, but I really wanted to give them credit up front. They did a great job on reporting on the behind-the-scenes things that we didn't necessarily get from James Gunn's video. All right, so the first project released will be an animated TV series called Creature Commandos, based on the comic property of the same name that brought vampires, werewolves, and zombies into the DC universe. Oh yeah. It's already in production, and Gunn revealed that this is the unified DCU. Animation will lead into live action, and will lead back into animation again. He noted that any project that's animated could also get a live action version and vice versa. Now, some confirmed characters include Weasel from Suicide Squad, played by James Gunn. Awesome. Loved his character. As well as Rick Flag Sr. Very interesting. And Gunn revealed they're casting voice actors to also play the same character in the live action down the road. Also, James Gunn wrote all 7 episodes himself. All right, next, Viola Davis will reprise her role as Amanda Waller in the TV series focused on her character. Some of the characters that we're doing were changing out, Gunn explained. This is the multiverse. But some of the characters were using the same actors. Viola is still playing Waller, and she has Team Peacemaker with her. And he said that this series will fall in between the first and second seasons of Peacemaker. And Gunn did explain that he's busy writing Creature Commandos, which we covered, and Superman, which we'll soon cover. So Peacemaker Season 2 is therefore delayed. But wow, we really learned a lot about this. I mean, we learned Waller's still around. The Suicide Squad members are still around. Peacemaker's still around, and we're going to get a Season 2. So that means James Gunn's wife is still around. Thank goodness her. That would have been ugly, I guess, for their relationship. So, wow, I learned a lot on this one. So, okay, there you go. Next, we've mentioned it a few times, so now it's time to discuss Superman Legacy. Both Gunn and Safran said that this will kick off their vision in earnest. This is really the start of the DCU. It's currently being written by James, and Safran said that he hopes that he can be persuaded, perhaps, to direct it as well. So yeah, I would be awesome. He needs to direct something if he has the time. Safran said it's not an origin story. It focuses on Superman balancing his Kryptonian heritage with his human upbringing. He is the embodiment of truth, justice, and the American way. He has kindness in a world that thinks kindness is old-fashioned. So I like this. It's going to be a kinder, gentler Superman. Nothing against Henry Cavill's Superman. He was great. But you can tell they're doing more of a Reeves-type Superman from the past. And then the tentative release date is July 11th of 2025. So that's a bummer. We have a little time to wait, but still. All right, next. Green Lantern will finally come to the screen, well, again, although this time in a new TV series. They called it a huge HBO-quality TV event. It's already in development, and our vision for this is much in the vein of True Detective. Safran teased it's terrestrial-based. It's got 2 of our favorite Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart, starring in a True Detective-type mystery, and it plays a really big role leading into the main story that we're telling across our film and television. That's cool. Nice to hear that this stuff is all tying together. Doesn't surprise me at all, but still, very nice to hear that. And then this series replaces the previous Green Lantern TV show that was in the works, which Safran said was more of a space opera and is no longer in development. Interesting. So a terrestrial-based story, and it won't be at the space opera like before. Okay. I love Green Lantern, so looking forward to it. Okay. Next, based on the comic book series The Authority, this film will incorporate characters from DC's Wildstorm imprint into the DCU. Gunn said one of the things with the DCU is it isn't just a story about heroes and villains, and not every movie and TV show is going to be about good guys versus bad guys. Giant thing from space comes, and good guy wins. Instead, Gunn explained, there are black hats, white hats, and gray hats. There are people that are anti-heroes, and there are people that are very questionable, like the Authority, who basically believe you can't fix the world in an easy manner, and they sort of take things into their own hands. All right, next. While Wonder Woman 3 may be up in the air, Gunn and Safran plan on building out the world of the Amazons in the TV series Paradise Lost, which will take place on Themyscira, the birthplace of Wonder Woman, before the birth of Diana, and following political intrigue of an all-female society. So Safran said it's going to be a Game of Thrones-ish story about Themyscira, Paradise Island, the home of the Amazons. It's also the birthplace of Wonder Woman. This drama is really about the political intrigue behind a society of women. And Gunn added, what's the origin of an island of all women? What are the beautiful truths and the ugly truths behind all of that? And what's the scheming like between the different power players in that society? And again, the series will take place before Diana's birth, so Wonder Woman will not be designed to be part of the show. All right, next, I love this. Based on Grant Morrison's Batman run, The Brave and the Bold, will introduce the DCU's Batman and Bat family, which will exist separate from Robert Pattinson's Batman and the Matt Reeves films. And we will talk more about that later for sure, so put a pin in that. But nonetheless, regarding Brave and the Bold, this is an introduction to the DCU Batman, Bruce Wayne, and also introducing our favorite Robin, Damian Wayne, who is a little, well, this is Gunn's quote, who is a little SOB assassin murderer. Okay, tell us what you think. Anyway, Gunn said of the film, Batman didn't know Damian existed for the first 8 to 10 years of his life, and Gunn described this as a very strange father-son story about the duo. Yeah, should be awesome. This should be great. All right, next. After years of starts and stops, a Booster Gold adaptation will come to fruition as part of Gunn and Safran's plans. Safran said it's about a loser from the future who uses basic future technology to come back to today and pretend to be a superhero. It's basically imposter syndrome as a superhero, James Gunn added. All right, next. Based on Tom King's comic book series, the Supergirl movie will introduce a very different type of character than audiences are possibly expecting. Now, Gunn explained, in our DCU, we see the difference between Superman, who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents from the time he was an infant, versus Supergirl, who was raised on a rock chip off of Krypton and watched everyone around her die and be killed in terrible ways for the first 14 years of her life. Wow. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. And then also, it's important to note this will not be a continuation of the Supergirl TV series. All right, next, Gunn and Safran are developing a Swamp Thing movie and use this opportunity to stress that although the DCU will be connected, they intend for each film to have tonal diversity. These stories, although they're interconnected, they're not the same tonally, Safran said. So each set of filmmakers brings their own aesthetic to these films, and the fun is seeing how these tonally different works will mash up in the future. This film will investigate the dark origins of Swamp Thing. And of course, the comic was adapted into a live-action TV series in 2019, but that was canceled after one season. So, wow, yeah, that's exciting. I can't wait to see that. I mean, granted, Marvel kind of got out of the gate first with Man-Thing, but this is a whole different ballgame. So, very excited to see Swamp Thing. Okay, so there you go. Those are the 10. Now, let's talk about the rest of the stuff. So, Safran went on to say the DCU, as we can see it, it's a multiverse. But we're going to be focusing on one universe within that multiverse. And though we will incorporate some actors and characters from the past, but mostly we're going to cast new characters. Now, if something is not DCU, those properties we're going to clearly label as DC Elseworlds, just like the comics do. We're going to be very clear. The bar is going to be very high for projects that are going to be outside the DCU, the Elseworlds projects. But every now and then, there'll be something that lives up to that, and we'll make that film or television series. Interesting. So, you can probably guess what some of these are, because they then gave examples, and those are Matt Reeves' Batman, the very adult Todd Phillips Joker movies, and they even mentioned Teen Titans Go. That's interesting because it makes you wonder, will there be another Teen Titans Go to the movies sequel to the 2018 film? Who knows? So, okay, I guess I'll pause here for just a second and throw out, I'm a little bummed that Pattinson's Batman isn't the main Batman. I kind of don't like having two Batman going on at once. I did fear this was going to happen. And in fact, two different Batman and then the Joker in a different set of movies. Oh, well, I guess. I mean, I'm sure glad they're keeping Reeves' Batman around. Fantastic movie. And same with Joker. I don't know. I kind of hoped it would all be unified, but that's okay. It's all good, right? It's all the more stories we're going to get. So it's all good. Anyway, these three will be considered Elseworlds stories, and there's the potential for more in the future. Okay, then a couple questions they took on some other lingering issues. So the first being the so-called Black Superman project that was supposed to be developed, supposedly, by producer J.J. Abrams and the writer Ta-Nehisi Coates. So Gunn and Safran said that the project was still in development. And that was a little surprising since we hadn't heard much about it, but it's good to hear it's still in development. So that's good. Then They were asked whether Sasha Calle, who was cast as Supergirl in The Flash, would reprise the role in the upcoming Supergirl film that was mentioned. Well, no, they said. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, they just haven't gotten that far. So I shouldn't say no, sorry. Not no, no, we don't know, is what they said. We just haven't gotten that far. We're figuring it all out. We don't know yet. We're pretty far away from Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Interesting. So we're going to see a Supergirl that may or may not be the Supergirl in the future. Okay, but then again, it's in the Flash movie, which is a big reset. So anyway, interesting. There's also a lingering question about Constantine, as it was revealed in September that Keanu Reeves would be back to play the supernatural investigator. The idea was to push the horror and violence further and secure an R rating. The Constantine sequel project was not mentioned by Safran or Gunn during the presentation. Doesn't mean it isn't going to happen, it just wasn't mentioned. Also not mentioned were the satellite of projects based on Reeves' Gotham City from the Batman. For example, Colin Farrell's HBO Max series about the Penguin, or a bunch of other projects mentioned, including potentially a Clayface project. So, I think they're probably still happening because obviously if Reeves' Batman is happening, there's no reason we wouldn't still get the Penguin, but it still wasn't mentioned. Okay, so there you go. That's all the information out there. So how about a little bit of analysis? I know I did some analysis along the way, but maybe I'll try to land the plane with my thoughts, but I really want to know your thoughts as well on all these things. So, what did you think about the fact that we didn't get a firm answer on whether the movies coming out this year, the 4 movies coming out this year, whether those will be part of the DCU or not? At least not firm answers. And which ones do you think will stay? And which ones do you think will go? As I mentioned, I think we're probably going to see another Aquaman movie. Assuming Blue Beetle does well, we'll see more Blue Beetle. But my guess is we don't see any more of The Flash or any more of Shazam after those movies. But just my guess. What did you think about the slate? What made you most excited? I can tell you what made me most excited. Superman, Swamp Thing, and Brave and the Bold. Those sounded really cool. So what do you think, though? What are your favorite out of there? What are you most excited for? And then what do you think about some of these lingering questions? What do you think about 2 Batman, Matt Reeves having his own universe? What do you think about the Supergirl situation? Let me know. I read all the comments and I respond to all of them. Let me know down in the comments what you think. Also, down in the comments, you will see an invite to the Discord server. We do mostly talk about the MCU, but hey, we have a DC channel and it's been getting lots of traction. So whether you want to talk MCU, DCU, or anything, there'll be a pinned comment with an invite to the Discord server. Come on out and join us. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we can all continue to enjoy the brand new, hot off the press, DCU as it grows and evolves into the future.